This is a short little mobility video assessment that you can do to just see where some imbalances might lie, and then the treatment to improve your mobility is some of the same. So when you find a spot that feels pretty tight, then try to just do a little bit more there. So the first thing is just dropping down into a low squat. Make your feet nice and wide, at least shoulder distance apart. And you're just gonna sink down into the hips and feel what it's like in those joints, in the front of the hips, in the back of your hips. You wanna also see what's going on with your low back. So you can see that mine's kind of curved this way. So I know that that's some tension that I always have in my low back. So as that works out, you may be able to be a little bit straighter or allow for your heels to stay onto the floor. So feel what's going on in the adductors, in the front of the hips. And then as you rotate around, you can feel what's going on in the outer part of the hip. Just moving around from this low squat position to feel what one side is doing compared to the other, how your heels and ankles are with dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, which is when you're on your feet this way. So often we have one side that's easier than the other, either from either more strength or it hasn't been injured or anything like that. So see what is going on. If you know that if you have had injuries, for instance, my ankle I broke a couple years ago, my leg. So this movement is super easy for me to do. However, being back in dorsiflexion is a little harder and gets more of a stretch. So I spend a little bit more time in trying to get this guy engaged. And as you're working through this, you can also just do some little manual work with your fingers, getting into the joint. Okay, so once you've done that, then another assessment is just doing some hip circles. So we're basically just wanting to see what the different joints are doing and where you feel tension. So you're going to drop down onto your hands and knees, and this is more assessment into the hips. Just kind of move back and forth into almost a child's pose position. Just sink back. And again, seeing what's going on with your back. Does it curve up like this? Does it arch? Because that gives you information of what you probably do when you're doing your sport. Okay, so from here, you're gonna play around with your hip movement again. So cat-cow is a good assessment for, again, that pelvic position and your spinal position. So you wanna have a neutral spine, which is kind of in between cat and cow. So you've got a slight engagement through the core, long through the spine, and a slight curve in the low back. But then you're gonna just think about extending through the top of your head and through your sacrum. So if you're like this, then if you went through the sacrum, that would go down. So what we're looking at, a neutral spine will mean that you'll be kind of going more straight out. So from here, you can also do some little side to side. See what's going on in the outer hips and the abductors. And again, the feet, so you can try it in this plantar flexion, or you can tuck your toes and shift back, and that's going to give you a little bit more dorsiflexion. And this also shows a little bit of where your shoulder mobility is and your thoracic mobility. So how much your rib cage can move and the stability in your shoulders. If this is too much on your wrists, you can use fists. So you just essentially stand on your fists. Okay. So play around with that. And that's a great way in the morning to just get some blood flow and motion in your joints.